Welcome, dear readers. You're listening to Time to Read, a Winnipeg Public Library podcast book club. We're recording today from the Carol Shields Auditorium at Millennium Library in Winnipeg, which is within Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ininew, and Dakota peoples, and in the National Homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation in Treaty 3 territory. In this episode, we will be discussing The Best Laid Plans by Terry Follis. I'm Dennis from the Idea Mill, and if elected, I will allow my cat Cooper to make all of my political decisions by interpreting his meows. Across the table from me is...
I'm Toby. I'm an outreach librarian based out of here at Millennium Library, and I will never think of the term private members bill in the same way again. And across the table from me is...
Hi, I'm Trevor from the Louisville Library, and it only took me 15 minutes today to get down here on my homemade hovercraft.
A good book can carry me away from an average and ordinary day, yeah. So keep it down, leave me alone, close the doors and turn off the phone, 'cause all I ever really need is a little more time to read.
And you, dear readers, we wouldn't do this without you. We'd love to know what you think, but we don't have a pollster on the payroll. Could you just send us an email? You can find our email address in all our social media outlets by going to wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca and scrolling to the bottom of the page. Hang around till the end of the episode to enjoy our favorite segment, Nerd Words for Word Nerds. Before we dive in, let's do a quick check-in with the panel. How's it going?
Well, we should welcome back real Trevor.
Yeah, it feels good to be here, and that AI Trevor, he had some good points.
He really did.
And quite eloquent, I thought. Mm-hmm. Maybe not quite as, what's the word that I'm doing right now?
Verbose?
Verbose and kind of like meandering around and trying to find, he was very kind of, he had his thoughts in his head and they came out the right way.
He was much easier to edit.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So,
but he lacked a certain character.
Yeah. So I'm glad he's available. Did you just have to break glass and say an emergency, break the glass, and AI Trevor appeared, or?
That would be so cool. No, it was much more mundane. I had to do a lot of typing.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, it's good to be back.
It's good to have you back.
So I was just, this book that we're about to discuss, The Best Laid Plans. One of the awards I got was the Stephen Leacock Medal for Humor, which is an award that's been given out since 1947 for a Canadian book that an anonymous panel of judges votes on. And this year, the winner, 2024, was The Librarianist by Patrick DeWitt, which I thought was notable because although I have famously said I do not like Patrick DeWitt, at least the books that we've read on this podcast, I read The Librarianist and I loved it. So I am really conflicted now what to think about this award.
And I love Patrick DeWitt, but I disliked The Librarianist.
Yeah. And I still haven't read it, so I don't know what to do now.
Yeah. To be the tiebreaker.
So congratulations, Patrick DeWitt. Keep books like The Librarianist coming.
Or not. Right.
Yeah, we can't advise you, Patrick. You're going to have to make your own mind up. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, it's don't let us influence you.
Okay. Well, so we're going to dive in now, and Toby's going to tell us about the author, and then Trevor will give us a summary of the book.
Okay. Terry Follis was born in 1959. He attended McMaster University, where he earned a Bachelor of Mechanical and Biomedical Engineering. During his degree, he got involved in student politics, eventually becoming president of the student union. And so after graduating, he started a career in federal politics, joining future Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's full-time staff for the 1984 Federal Liberal Leadership Campaign. He also served on the political staff of the Liberal Minister of State for Youth and in the short-lived cabinet of Prime Minister John Turner. In 1985, he returned to Ottawa and worked as a legislative assistant to the Honourable Robert Nixon in the newly elected Liberal Ontario government. He then left politics and was a government affairs and communications consultant from 1988 to 1995. In 1995, he started a public relations and social digital media agency. He wrote Best Laid Plans in 2005, but publishers were not interested, so he released it in a podcast format, and after its popularity, he self-published a print version in 2007, and the book went on to win the Stephen Leacock Award, and it was the first self-published book to ever do so. And after the win, he signed with McClelland and Stewart, who republished his book in 2008. Best Laid Plans also won Canada Reads in 2011, where it was called the Essential Canadian Novel of the Decade. It was also made into a 6-part TV miniseries, which debuted in 2014, and developed into a stage musical, which played in Vancouver in 2015. The book sequel, The High Road, was published in 2010, was also a finalist for the Leacock Award. He's written 7 additional novels, all bestsellers, including Up and Down, which won the 2013 OLA Evergreen Award, No Relation, which also won the Stephen Leacock Award, and Operation Angus, which is the 3rd installment starring Angus McClintock. He has also written for many publications, including Maclean's, Canadian Geographic, Reader's Digest, Toronto Life, and the Globe and Mail. He won the Libris Award for Author of the Year, presented by the Canadian Booksellers Association, and received the L.W. Schelmelt Distinguished Engineering Alumni Award from McMaster in 2014. He's also hosted over 200 episodes of the popular business podcast Inside PR. In 2022, he retired from the agency he founded to write full-time, and as expected, he has a thing for hovercrafts.
All right, so the Best Laid Plans. Burnt out from his job on Parliament Hill and suffering from a recent breakup, Liberal speechwriter Daniel Addison takes a job with the University of Ottawa's English department and rents a boathouse apartment on the property of recently widowed engineering professor Angus McClintock. That's one long sentence. As part of his exit strategy, Daniel agrees to find a Liberal candidate to run in his riding to remain on good terms with the party bosses. Each have a task they dread, and so they agree to swap roles. Daniel will teach Angus's first-year engineering students English, and Angus will put his name forward as the Liberal candidate that Daniel needs. Angus thinks he's getting the better end of the deal, as the riding is one of the safest Tory seats in the country, home to the very popular Tory Finance Minister Eric Cameron. He also insists that he won't be required to do any campaigning himself, participate in any debates, or even pose for any photos. To say Angus is a long shot is an understatement. And yet, nothing is certain in politics. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Succinct. Nice work.
Thanks.
That's where it ended.
That's yeah. I thought, I know sometimes, I learned something from virtual Trevor that, less is more.
Yeah.
Should I have gone on?
No.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, we can, I'm sure things will come out. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so how did you guys find it?
Well, as I told Trevor a couple weeks ago, this was an accidental reread for me. I was writing the library blog post for this book, and I was reading the summary, and I thought, that sounds extremely familiar. And before I had my Bookstagram account, I had a book journal where I kept track of the books I read, and I went through it. And yeah, sure enough, I read this book about 10 years ago. Uh-huh. And it obviously didn't make enough of an impression that I remembered having read it. And I kind of feel similar about it, about my reread.
You don't remember rereading it now?
Yeah. It's a book that, I can't find many faults with it. I mean, I can get nitpicky and definitely find faults with it. But
I can find faults.
Yeah, I mean, I think the plot is good. The characters are okay. The writing is fine. It's just not a type of book I enjoy. I think it's well done as a book, as an entity, but it's just not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hearing the author biography and the awards it won, I had heard about this book over the years as being this book that's great for book clubs or the quintessential Canadian humor book. And it was even mentioned on another library program earlier this year that we called Next Page Live. I think that we called it Next Read.
Oh,
our next,
something like that.
We've done a library program a few times, and no one can remember the name of it. But it's like a Zoom call where you talk about. And this book was mentioned by another person. I thought that sounds interesting, and so I proposed it for this podcast. So I had an idea, and sometimes you have an idea in your head of what a book is going to be. You start reading it, and it's not that book. So I'm not sure whether it's the book's fault or if it's my fault. But I did not enjoy this book really at all. It's sort of. I know what you're saying, Toby. On paper, and books are on paper, but you know what I mean? Like in the outline.
Not the ebooks.
No. Like if you were to elevator pitch this book, it would be like fantastic. What a fun roller coaster that will be. And yet it didn't seem that way. It seemed, I don't know, the writing, I found it very strange. The choices that he made, like the attention to detail he spent on unimportant things, like describing the layout of a room. Like I was like, is this like a real estate listing? Talking about like the boathouse and what's on the eastern wall and this, and then and the retirement home and all that. And yet other times in the book, and I feel like this is probably a cardinal sin, is to use the term nondescript when you're describing something. And he does it on 2 consecutive pages where he describes a house being nondescript. I mean, describe it. I mean, we talk about the problem of showing rather than telling, or telling rather than showing. You want to show something and not tell. I felt there's a lot of telling in this book. Look how quirky these characters are. Look how crusty Angus is. Look at this. And I just didn't buy it. I think in my notes here I wrote, it felt like a collaboration between Gordon Corman and Red Green. Now I love Gordon Corman.
I don't know what that means.
Okay,
but...
well, you guys read Gordon Corman as kids, right? Here, like Bruno and Boots. Like, I love those books. They're always like these 2 guys getting into trouble, and there's like very broad characters, and it all kind of ends up well in the end. I felt like I was reading a grown-up version of a Bruno and Boots book, but with like just dumb humor.
Yeah, it's very like PG, super Canadian, like corner gas type humor.
Yes,
yeah.
that's a good descriptor. If you're into that kind of stuff, and obviously lots of people are. Things won awards. He's written several books in the series. So, but I'm just saying, from my personal take on it was I did not enjoy it. It was a chore to read.
Oh.
Yeah,
I did not find it a chore to read. But I would agree with the sentiment that it wasn't what I expected, really, because I had heard of Terry Fallis before. It had been recommended, and it seemed like something that would check my boxes, And, yeah, it didn't really click with me. I didn't find it a chore to read. Like, I find the writing fine and easy enough to go through, and I spread this one out over a week.
Luxury.
Yeah, I know. I finished this morning, but... I wasn't in a rush to read it. It never felt like I didn't dread reading it, but also the humor didn't connect it with me the way that I thought it would, that the author would want it to. And I think part of it is a lot of the comedic writing that I read, it depends a lot on clever wordplay, is to me like an integral part of comedic writing. And it wasn't really any of that. I think it would have done better if I was a better visualizer, because there were a lot of times he was clearly trying to set up an image of something, but the narrator also had this kind of passive writing style, or passive style in general, that took some of the oomph out of it. And you're supposed to read between the lines and think, oh yeah, he's cleverly saying that, such and such. But it just takes away the weight of it for me. And yeah. And there are still some scenes that obviously were funny, but they were also a little telegraphed. Like the climax of the novel, to put a spoiler right in it, there's a blizzard, and and Angus has to get to Parliament in order to cast a vote. And they've been talking the whole book about how he's got a hovercraft. And so as soon as it's a blizzard and they got to get there, it's like, okay, he's going on the hovercraft. He's going to make it last minute. It's going to be this big thing where in a movie it would be playing I Need a Hero as he rushes down through it. But it was telegraphed. And so when he actually ran into the room, there was no tension, no comedic release or anything like that, because you knew that was going to happen.
I believe it was Chekhov who said, if you introduce a hovercraft in the first act, you have to jump on it right on the river in the next, or why introduce it?
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't find it also like totally not funny or irritating to read or anything like that. But it was pleasant. It was like a cozy comedy, as opposed to a cozy mystery or, the new genre of like cozy fantasy, where it's comfortable. Nothing there to stress you too much. You're not going to be too put out by any of it. A mild smile at many of the scenes,
Yeah.
You're not in danger of busting a gut laughing. That's not going to happen, but it's a pleasant ride.
I think there's a real fine line when the main character, I think he's trying to be like a likable doofus, and I found him an unlikable doofus, the main character.
You're talking about Daniel, right?
Daniel, exactly. Yeah. Like I just found him unlikable in the way that he spoke, in the way that he was narrating the story, a lot of the cliches.
He's very whiny, and he's like, he's so consumed with wanting to get out of politics. And then when Angus is elected and he's all worried about getting fired, like it was, it was a very, very big suspension, of disbelief, trying to figure out why he just didn't leave politics. Like why he felt beholden to find this candidate. Now I know you needed something to make the story, but I didn't find any of it believable.
Well, I will say that is one thing that I did buy, because the character, the slightly neurotic, polite, carefully worded person, he kind of established at the beginning he was a completist. He liked to hold things through. He felt obligation. That whole thing about the PhD, how he hadn't actually gotten it before he went into politics, but then he did end up finishing it anyway. And so for him, he was like, he was leaving politics, but he kind of still wanted to leave the door open. So he still wanted to be on good terms with people. And then when Angus got elected, he's like, well, okay, I got him into this. It's like, I could see him banging his head. It's like, I guess I have to, because this, so that I bought. It seemed like he was the type of character who would feel obligated then to follow up, even if it wasn't exactly what he really wanted to do.
Yeah, he's loyal. He's loyal to the party.
Yeah, he's loyal to his party. He felt bad about getting Angus into something that he really didn't think would happen, because, what are the odds, right? So that part I felt was okay. But, one of the things about, comedy can be really madcap, and so you have unlikely things happening. But man, were things really lined up in a certain way in this book, right?
Uh-huh.
The odds of any individual thing in the book happening are really, really long, and yet they all line up perfectly, to the point where it didn't even seem like a strain. Like Angus gets elected and he's like, oh crap. Then he delivers a magnificent speech and he just flies along doing everything he wants to do. And it all works out perfectly, except for the time he gets donuts thrown into his face, until the very end. And then he's like, you know what? I think I kind of like this politics thing.
And you know what? The donuts was unexpected, because you start reading that scene and you're like, oh, another crowd he's going to win over.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
I did appreciate the fact that he didn't get that one, and he got a bit of a leveling kind of, you can't just do anything you want, Angus. I think a lot of this would work reasonably well as like a TV show or as a movie or something like that. So knowing that there's a series about it, I think that might work better for me than the book version of it.
Have either of you watched any of the TV series? Or
I looked for the trailer and I couldn't find it, but there was like a full episode on YouTube, so I watched part of it just to see what the casting was like.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't find. I thought it might be on CBC Gem or something. I couldn't, but it was like episode 2 of the 6 parts, so it was already into it. And I'd like to hear your thoughts of what you thought their adaptation was like.
I watched very little of it. Okay. I mostly just wanted to see what the characters looked like. And they were, they're 2 white guys, one's old and Scottish and one's younger and not Scottish. I didn't have any strong opinions.
Yeah. I only watched about 10 minutes of it just to get a sense. And I quite liked the guy that played Daniel much more in the TV show than I did in the book, maybe because he comes across a little more likable, and he does sort of that Ferris Bueller talking right at the camera thing a lot and walking. And so I was like, okay, I could actually find this guy likable. I didn't find him likable in the book, but the guy that played Angus was Kenneth Welsh. He was a Canadian actor, and he always played villains. Like he played Wyndham Earl on Twin Peaks. He played Colin Thatcher in this miniseries about that Saskatchewan cabinet minister that had his wife murdered. And so I've always seen him as like a bad guy. And so he played Krusty well, but he didn't seem lovable to me, whatever. But the show seemed like it might be worth watching, I'd say.
I appreciated that Mark McKinney was in it. I forwarded to see Mark McKinney, so I'm not sure do you know what part he was?
I think he was like the Liberal leader.
Okay.
Who may be unnamed in the novel.
Yeah. Never named. Yeah. He's always the leader.
I think they must beef up that part in the TV show because they got Mark McKinney. Because they give him a lot of like scene stealing, where he's like trying to write a speech and he's all this pompous kind of guy. So I think they definitely have, wrote that character bigger than the novel.
Did you see the 2 Petes?
I did not see the Petes.
No, but rather than being young kind of engineering students with like, green hair or whatever, they seem to be visible minorities. in the show. There seemed to be.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Like, I did find that part of the book so dated. It's like, oh my God, they have mohawks and piercings and fishnets, and they're smart. What?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like,
I kept checking the date because I thought, was this written in the 90s?
yeah.
And
So
I was like, no, 2008?
So I can see
yeah.
why they had to change that
Yes.
because it doesn't, I don't buy it. And also, I mean, like, there's beta cams in this book as well. Like, I don't know what decade he's stuck in, but it's not the aughts.
Yeah, there were a couple of little things like that.
And the other thing that seemed a little bit dated was the whole scandal that brings down the finance minister. Like it's kind of like kink shaming a bit.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
like, I mean, this, so what? I think if that book came out today, it would have to be a different scandal.
Why were they let out of the house in handcuffs, though?
That I didn't understand either.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think because weren't they already in handcuffs as part of their?
Both of them?
I don't know.
No,
they
way
were
it
actually they were
sounded
arrested.
like the cops had put them in a cop car.
Yeah, see, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know that. I don't know why they were handcuffed. Like,
See, that didn't make any sense
Yeah.
because it's like it was kind of clear from the description that they couldn't have set the house on fire, and there's nothing illegal about walking around in leather.
Yeah,
You know, so why they were apparently arrested at the scene was confusing.
Well, so the cameras could see them, you know, to serve the plot.
Well, I know
Yeah.
from a
Right.
plot point of
Yeah.
view, it makes it more embarrassing. But also, like, why would the cops? It wouldn't have happened. You know?
No.
And then also, okay, yeah, it's a scandal, especially for a party that has often put itself as like family focused and would definitely reduce his vote count. But like, they left the country.
yeah. That's what I mean. Like,
They just
They
up
just
and
disappeared.
disappeared from
Yeah.
the country and ended up in like the Bahamas or something.
Yeah.
It's like, why did they do that? Like,
It feels like something that would happen like in an 80s comedy where all of a sudden it cuts to like, you know, a mid-credits scene and there they are on a beach somewhere, you know, like it just seemed, again, like I didn't think that was funny. Like I think I have a pretty good sense of humor, but it just didn't land with me, you know?
no, it was a weird thing. And I know they had to have something shocking and dramatic that happened really, really fast. And I guess they didn't want it to be financial embezzlement or something like that for some reason, but that would have made more sense.
That would
for
have been way
finance.
funnier if he was like this, you know, finance minister that could do no wrong. And he turns out he's, you know, I don't know, you know, smuggling furs or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just was like, come on, leave the guy alone. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Well, and he kind of played that like, oh, well, we're more progressive thinking and stuff, and it shouldn't really be a thing. And, you know, Angus made, you know, oh, we should be leaving him alone. So they made the noises, but at the same time still poked fun at it. And it's like, well.
Yeah, it was a major plot point.
Yeah, it was pretty significant. So the setup was a little off.
As I was reading it, I was kind of wondering whether it was because it was a first novel from somebody who was not at that time a professional writer, so to speak. So I got the second book in the series, The High Road, just to see if maybe the writing. But no, it's just kind of more of the same. I have to say, I was thinking that maybe he was just hitting his stride, and then the series takes off because he's written 3 books in that series, and I think 7 books altogether. So he's reaching an audience.
People like him.
People like him.
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
he wins awards.
Yeah. I mean, I maybe sometimes don't share the popular opinion. I'll share another hot take. Do you know a popular Canadian author who I do not like?
Margaret Atwood.
No, no. I mean, I've read some Margaret Atwood. I like her, especially the Orcs and Craigs series. Louise Penny.
Oh,
Yeah.
like the
Mystery,
Mysteries.
the 12 Pines or the 2 Pines or the
one with pines in it.
the Inspector Gamache or whatever. I tried to read them. I love Agatha Christie. They said it's like Canada's Agatha Christie. I read a couple. Cannot get into them.
Oh, I think I read 2. I didn't find them bad or anything.
Yeah,
Just not as gripping as some, but I didn't think they were bad.
But that's just a little aside. Just a
Yeah.
fun
I read-
fact
Well,
about
that's
me.
why it's a hot take.
That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly. Yeah. You heard it here first.
Well, I mean, ultimately, your appreciation for any style of writing is very personal, right? And comedy is that way too. There's lots of comedians I don't think are particularly funny, but they do quite well for themselves. So, you know. But in terms of comedic writing that I have read in the past, it wasn't nearly as funny as most of the stuff that I like.
Did you find French Exit funnier?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they were also unlikely circumstances, but like the characters were really different in that one. Whereas the characters in this one, I mean, okay, you got a know-it-all engineering prof who's like forthright and has lots of funny phrases. And it's like, yeah, I actually know some people like that. You know, Daniel with his politeness and everything. Yeah, I know people like that. I know smart and creative people who look like goth punks. You know, the characters are real people, more or less. And the situations weren't that extreme. They were fortunate, you know, like the shoe company is struggling and wants to get some government help, but like, you know, Angus doesn't really want to do that. But hey, as luck would have it, he happens to know someone who needs to get a product manufactured, and somehow they haven't lined up anything yet. And they really have to do it in a short period of time, or else their whole thing is going to go bust.
But what are they going to do for a workforce?
But yeah, exactly. And then it's just, you can just plug those all into each other and it works. And it's like, well, that can totally happen, but the fortunate timing of everything to line up with his election and such is just very unlikely. But it's not madcap unlikely. It's not this weird juxtaposition that makes you think twice. It's just good fortune. You know, it's a fortunate happenstance. So yeah, it doesn't tickle my funny bone the way a different scenario might, or the things that in French Exit did. Like there, people did things that were like totally unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, yeah, the French Exit was way funnier, even though the ending of the book ruined everything else. Right? Didn't I just describe it as like, I can't remember now, but I think it was something about like eating a slice of pizza that had a dog turd at the end of it or something?
Yeah.
I can't, you know, how it was delicious up until the very end.
Yeah.
Or something. So that was French Exit. This thing is kind of more, not even pizza. This is kind of like, this book, if I had to put it as a food, was maybe like lukewarm cream of wheat.
Yeah, I had thought oatmeal before you said cream of wheat. Yeah, but with like nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing added to it. Because I do like oatmeal.
Yeah. But like no berries or fruit, no brown
maple
sugar on
syrup.
top. No, just kind of the kind of goop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people like goop, you know? Like,
yeah.
You know, it's...
Some people really like goop.
Yeah, it's nutritious. Yeah. Nutritious goop.
Yeah, and there's no harm in this. If this, like you say, if this is a light read, if this is a pleasure for someone, I say go for it.
Well, yeah, and I think this is the type of novel I wouldn't mind reading just as like, you know, you pick it up as you go, you read a bit. It's not too stressful. It doesn't hold you too long, so you can put it down as you need. Mm-hmm. It's comfortable. And I think I would say it's like a cozy comedy. Like, it's just not too much of anything.
Yeah, kind of low stakes.
Yeah. I think that's the best thing I can say for it. It's cozy, low stakes, easygoing. It's not poorly written, although all the little grammar jokes were like, okay, fine. Okay, we get your point. Yeah.
Also, I mean, Angus doesn't use proper grammar all the time, but is happy correcting people who are using grammar incorrectly, like with the words he says that are like in his accent or like they're not Scottish words.
Right, but they're kind of written phonetically, like how he sort of...
Yeah. Well, you can't blame a man for his accent.
No, but I mean, if he's all about the proper use of the English language, then surely he would tone down the Scottishness of it, perhaps.
I don't think people with a strong accent have a choice, really.
Yeah.
Although authors do. Yeah. I've read some people who think that authors should not be phoneticizing accents. I can't remember their reasoning for it. I mean, I would forget the accent if it wasn't made explicit.
It was hard to forget that Angus was a crusty Scotsman. Like it seemed like every stereotype.
I mean, his name.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I did enjoy how one of the was it the assistant to the leader was like calling him Anguish at one point. It's like, okay, hadn't thought of that one. Good one. But yeah, man, for all the time they also spent talking about how like the many dedicated parliamentarians working hard for the people, they sure didn't exhibit any of them. As he kept talking about how hard politicians were working for the people, and like that seemed to be one of the points that the book was trying to make, because it was a little preachy about how politics should be and how politics are. He kept making the point of all these dedicated politicians, but not a single one in the book aside from Angus was at all honorable. So missed a little opportunity there. Everyone was, for the most part, a clown or intentionally devious. Like the leader came across as a buffoon.
Yep.
Even though Daniel said, no, he's a really good guy, it's like, but offered no evidence for it.
And then being played by Mark McKinney doesn't help his cause either in the TV series.
Did you learn anything about the Canadian federal politics worlds that you didn't know about from this book? Did it illuminate anything?
Well, I guess things about like only MPs can go in this room. I had never actually thought about that. They're identified by a little lapel pin. That's how the security separates them from the hangers-on. Yeah,
I would have enjoyed more of those little sort of like insider details, like even like the painter that uses gold to paint the names on the office doors, like just little things. You could tell that he did work in politics and sort of had seen those things. But I would have liked maybe more of that.
Yeah.
The descriptions of the parliamentary library were great, I thought.
Yeah. I'd never thought to look that up, and I did because I was curious as to what it looked like.
Yeah. It is a beautiful room.
And I mean, it's probably no surprise to anyone, us being library folk, we have a tendency to like see what other libraries are like.
Yeah.
Every time I visited another city, I almost always find the local branch.
I learned about the speaker. That was not something, like I know about the role of the speaker in Parliament, but, you watch clips of Parliament and you see, Trudeau saying Mr. Speaker and like talking to the speaker instead of to the person that they've addressed. And I didn't really understand that. And so I looked it up and learned some stuff about that.
Another thing I don't know how to take in the novel, like Angus famously makes a stand about not poo-pooing the throne speech and just taking it as written and, like that. Whereas the Liberal leader is like, no, we have to take this government down, take him down on the throne speech, get him all we can, etc. And it's supposed to be like Angus showing this is the upright way to do it. But then the government then immediately betrays everything in the throne speech anyway, and they have to take him down anyway. So if they'd followed the Liberal leader's advice, they could have done that sooner and avoided the very dangerous mini budget. So it kind of looks like the Liberal leader was right there.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it would have saved like 3 or 4 months worth of wasted time.
Yeah.
It would have struck another election. Angus probably would have been unseated immediately after. At that point, he would have been out of politics, would have made his life easier. Yeah, no, I think that his making a stand there just kind of delayed everything and allowed things to get worse before they got better.
Yeah.
Although it did allow him to, have that great scene with the gravel guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Very stereotypical American businessman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Big Southern drawl. It's like, hey, man, can you help me get rid of all these environmental regulations? It's like, oh, yeah, we can totally do that for you. Oh, that'd be great. It was a little broad.
Yeah, as was the whole novel, really.
Yeah, which, it's comedy, so it can be broad. It lacked punch.
And nuance, maybe?
Yeah.
Pretty like one-dimensional characters.
Yeah.
Or is it two-dimensional? Two-dimensional, right? When you say when it's, I guess one-dimensional, what is that?
One-dimensional, flat.
Flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I was a little surprised at that didn't develop any further was, so Angus was married to a famous feminist writer, right? Maris something? Marin. And then, this plays out later when this really tough feminist advocate is in for a meeting and Daniel's convinced she's going to be just tearing Angus apart because that's what she's famous for. And yet they're like hugging and embracing and crying together. And yes, I know you're an ally. And that's it. That was pretty much the whole payoff to him being married to a famous feminist writer is just, when the feminists come to talk to him, they're all happy. And it was kind of,
Yeah, I mean, Follis is a proud feminist. He has talked about it in interviews. And I read an interview where he talks specifically about wanting to put older women characters in his novel, like powerful older women. And I think we see this with Muriel. But it's a lot of lip service, I think. Like, Lindsay, like, what is that? You know, she's just this hot poli-sci grad student who, like, barely has any dialogue, but we always know exactly what she's wearing. You know, like, I don't know.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
And so, okay, and that was the hottest kind of topic also that he covered. Like, there wasn't anything to do with race, religion, like, you know, I know not every topic is going to come up in discussion, and it's a comedy, so it's supposed to be light, but also taking all the weight away from it takes away some real chance for incisive comedy or something a little more interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I was disappointed that there was no real payoff to the whole thing with his wife. Mm-hmm. It added a dimension to the character. It's like, okay, he's a crusty engineering type and you have a stereotype in your head about what that is, but he's been softened by his wife, who he loves dearly and writes letters to constantly. But it just felt like it wasn't a very impactful result, like from a story point of view.
Yeah. He definitely could have worked with that more than he did.
Yeah, I felt that as nice as those letters to his wife were at the end of each chapter, it really bogged the story down. And
it just summarized what had just happened.
Yeah. And I could have done without them.
Yeah.
But they didn't feel like they quite fit in there, except for maybe to soften his like you say, his crusty exterior.
I'm not actually sure of the point of them now that I think about it. Like, it did not add a lot. I mean, it let you know that one time you let Daniel win a chess match.
Yeah.
Because you need to know that for some reason. But
they added that bit of heart, that human touch. Like, when I looked up this book on Goodreads, a lot of people raved about the letters. They said it was their favorite part of the book.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It felt like they were a very different tone to the rest of the book.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, that's why I was thinking they didn't belong, because they were well written.
Well, I thought the writing was like the writing style at least was fine.
Oh, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't even like the writing style.
No?
I didn't.
It grated at you every time you went through it?
Well, not every time, but probably once a paragraph.
Oh, wow.
There was like some phrase or something that just was like, yeah. But that's only one person's opinion.
Yeah, we know who was not one of the anonymous people on the Stephen Leacock Award committee.
Do you know who probably was? Terry Follis.
It's anonymous. Yeah, you wouldn't even know.
Yeah. He's won it twice, by the way.
And been nominated, like, for almost every single one of his books. Yeah.
Maybe that's just more of a state of Canadian humor writing.
Yeah.
Man, we got to find another Canadian humor book to do on the show yet. And
we did French Exit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we got to find another one.
Another one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one that didn't...
I mean, I think Miriam Tave's books are quite funny. Like, they're funny in a different way. Like, All My Puny Sorrows, which we read on the podcast.
It was a laugh riot.
I mean, it's a very sad,
I'm
emotionally devastating book. Yeah. But like, there's also some incredible moments of humor in that book.
There absolutely is.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when they moved to Toronto and she's living with her mom, and she says living with her mom is like living with Winnie the Pooh. She goes out and has adventures and then comes back. And there's like moments like that, right? And
Yeah, but I don't think I would put that in the category of comedic writing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess she has other novels that are more like in the comedy
I think
category,
I laughed more reading All My Puny Sorrows than I did reading The Best Laid Plans.
Yeah, same.
Well, and it had much more impact overall, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're all kind of down on this book.
Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah. Thanks, Remy.
Did Remy like it?
Well, I don't know if he liked it. We'd have to go back and look at the footage, but he was the one. I wasn't going to name names, but he was the one that mentioned it as a something to read.
Yeah, Remy being one of our librarian colleagues who is quite an intelligent, thoughtful person who has made lots of good suggestions.
Which makes this so much more difficult.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, I guess we shouldn't keep beating this one to death then. Do we have any final statements we want to make other than the kind of meh that we've been getting?
Yeah, I don't think any of us are going to rush out to read another book by Terry Follis.
No, unfortunately not.
No. I tried.
But he's doing just fine without us.
Yeah, absolutely.
He is.
Yeah.
And if you, dear reader, enjoyed this book and think we're out of our minds, please email and tell us, because we'd like to know what you thought was really funny.
And it's rare for us to all kind of agree-ish
It's
on
true,
a book.
yeah.
I mean, we got levels. I mean, you obviously disliked it the most.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But even I am not like super high on it. So.
Yeah.
And this conversation has made me like it less. So
that's what the effect it's having on me too. Oh. This might really dampen sales of this book from 2008.
All of a sudden, YouTube will take down that one episode.
Okay, so yeah, unfortunately, we don't recommend this one highly. But
you do you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, in that case, we're going to recommend some books now that maybe you would like more than this one, or more than we like this one. So tell us a book.
I don't have a book.
You don't have a book?
No, I have something, but it's not a book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to do your thing that's not a book, or do you want me to do my book?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to me.
Well, let's start with a book.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
When I was reading this book, Best Laid Plans, I started thinking about other books that I would rather have been reading. And the one that I came up with is this book. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called The Ascent of Rum Doodle by W.E. Bowman. And
It's
I discovered
not by
this.
Bill Bryson?
Yeah, Bill Bryson wrote the introduction.
His name is so much bigger on
His
the
name
cover.
is bigger than the author's.
Well, and I think the reason for that is this poor guy, W.E. Bowman, wrote this book in 1957 in the wake of sort of all of the excitement and optimism of when Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay got to the top of Everest. So what this book is it's a parody of a mountaineering adventure. In the introduction, Bill Bryson says, perhaps no type of humor is more difficult to sustain over the length of a book than a parody. And I think the Best Laid Plans kind of shows that it's hard to keep that going. But this book is fantastic. It was published in 1957, and it did reasonably well. But it didn't, obviously, with Bill Bryson's name bigger than W. Bowman. He's not a household name. But the novel took on a kind of a cult following among mountaineers and polar explorers who just felt that his attention to detail was so perfect that this must have been a pseudonym for an actual mountain climber or someone who knew the business. But no, he rarely left England. He'd only been to the Alps once. He was just a very kind of unassuming, again, engineer who wrote very few books in his life and only got a couple published before he passed away in the mid-'80s. It kind of has lived on in the mountaineering community. And in fact, in the late 60s, the Australian Antarctic expedition named some specific peaks from the book in Antarctica. And some of them actually even made it onto a map. And so there is Mount Rumdoodle in Antarctica, and I looked it up. It still exists on Google Maps. And there's a sort of a running joke in this book where the number 153 keeps appearing over and over again in different ways, and they're trying to figure out, well, why? And apparently that was the house number of the author growing up. And so on the original maps of Antarctica, it says Mount Rumdoodle. Population 153, elevation 153 meters. So I would very much recommend The Ascent of Rumdoodle. And I should tell you, I discovered this book probably 25 years ago when I was a shelver at the old Centennial Library doing something called shelf reading, which, to those who are unaware, you just sort of read, make sure all the books are in the correct order on the shelf. It's not the most fun of library jobs, but as I was shelf reading, I came across this book, and because I like Bill Bryson, I took it down and checked it out, and I laugh out loud funny, and I looked it up, and sure enough, there's one copy left in our system. So this is it. So if you are interested in reading what Bill Bryson says, one of the funniest books you will ever read. Yeah, I feel like I'm talking like I'm on the morning show. So that's all I'm going to say now.
Yeah. Good recommendation.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by Everest. So I might take that from you, actually.
I think you should. I understand you have some reading time coming up.
I sure do. Yeah. Okay. So as I said, I don't have a book just because I I didn't particularly enjoy this book, and I couldn't think of something that fit in the same category because obviously I don't read books like this. So I'm going to recommend a TV show. While I was reading Best Laid Plans, I kept being reminded of the show Veep. Have you seen Veep?
Yeah, I have not seen it, no.
Okay, so it's a political satire, and it also features a character named McClintock, so there's the parallel there. So if you haven't seen it, it's an American comedy. It follows the vice president, who is played just perfectly by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, as she attempts to make her mark and leave a legacy. And it is very funny. There's a lot of very quick dialogue, a lot of jokes. It's very crass. It's pretty mean-spirited, which is not at all the humor of Best Laid Plans, but is perhaps more a humor that I find funny. I don't know. It's more than mean. It's witty and funny in other ways, but it is quite mean. And I rewatched it recently. It seems particularly relevant with the American election coming up, and it's just, it's so funny. It's so funny. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I also picked something that isn't a book, and maybe kind of obvious if you read Best Laid Plans. So I'm going to recommend the 1993 film Dave, starring Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver. Familiar with it?
Not at all.
Oh, you have not seen? Well, it's from 93, so maybe you're too young to look at that type of thing. In this movie, our titular protagonist is a regular guy who just happens to look a lot like the President of the United States, enough so that he makes extra money by doing an impression of the President for parties and events, and because of that, he even gets a role as a body double for the President at a presidential event. When the President has an apparent stroke, his political allies cover it up by recruiting Dave to pretend to be the President while they orchestrate things behind the scenes. Dave is disturbed by the way things are being run and decides to take control of the situation and put forward progressive policies, which puts him in the crosshairs of the cynical political operatives who have put him where he is. Like the Best Laid Plans, it's an upbeat comedy about a regular person who is suddenly able to effect positive change in a cynical, broken system with a little bit of romance on the side. Unfortunately, we don't have a copy of it in our collection, and a quick search online indicates it's not available from any of the regular streaming services, but it is something you can rent online from a few different places, or just watch TV channels late at night where they run old movies, because I feel like...
Who has cable these days?
I don't know. I'm assuming someone does.
Or if you email us, Dennis will lend out his VHS copy.
I don't have a copy. The alternate I was going to do in case someone else picked it was Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving, because it was mentioned in the book.
I hate that book.
Yeah? I've never read it.
Okay.
It's devastating.
I mean, John Irving, I don't mind John Irving. I've read several of his books, and I've liked most of them, but that one pissed me off. Did you like Owen Meany?
I've read it because someone told me it was the best book ever. And, I mean... No,
it wasn't the best book ever.
I don't know.
Okay, well then I'm not putting that as an alternate pick then.
World According to Garp and Cider House Rules are much better.
Okay, but if you are looking for something that I think is funny, Tim Dorsey is an author who has written a whole series of books about a character named Serge Storms, who's like the ultimate Florida man, who goes through Florida enjoying the scenery and telling you lots of things about Florida history while also killing people who are really rude and
I was wondering where the crime was going to come in when you said typical Florida man.
Yeah. Now, and this is the type of thing I would say is totally madcap, very unrealistic, but like hilarious characters doing ridiculous things that you will hopefully never actually see in real life. Those are a lot of fun, but the ones that I've read in that series we no longer have because they're the older ones, and Tim Dorsey has unfortunately passed away, so there won't be any more of these, but they're a lot of fun. They're just fun books you don't have to think too hard about, but will appreciate if you like more wacky humor. So now we should move on to our nerdlier segment.
Nerdlier?
Nerdlier.
Okay.
I know that wasn't a great word. I'm sure Angus and Daniel would criticize me for making it. But Nerd Words for Word Nerds, wherein we elevate and explicate small bits of language for your entertainment. Who would like to start with their word?
I mean, I have a word.
That's good.
And the word is whittling, spelled Witling, not to be confused with whitling, spelled Whitling, which is apparently a lake trout that has reached its second birthday. So it's not whitling.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean second birthday?
Or first birthday? It's second year.
It's like a new species?
No, it's a mature trout that's lived for 2 years. It's called a whitling, but that's not my word. I'm saying don't get confused with whitling.
Don't get confused because that's not the word.
No, my word is whitling, which is Whitling.
I'm
no
afraid
H.
we are confused.
No, there's no H. If you put an H in there, you're talking about a mature fish.
Okay.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Whitling, which is a person who thinks himself or herself witty, even if they may not be. And I feel like maybe our friend Mr. Follis falls under that category. And the ling ending is usually derogatory, like constantly an underling. So
Right.
constantly a whitling.
Okay.
Whitling. And apparently they also can be found in lakes. No, that's whitling.
I'm still confused about that. What do you mean?
So a whitling is a fish that thinks it's pretty smart but isn't. And it's at least 2 years old.
Right. Exactly right. It'll all make sense in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take
Yeah.
your word for it.
Yeah.
Okay, smart fish.
Whitling. The word is whitling.
All right. I can't beat that. My word is Ouroboros, which is a word that kept showing up for me. It came up several times in a book I was recently reading. And then I saw it again in a New York Times article I was reading. So I had to look it up. It is the circular symbol that depicts a snake or dragon devouring its own tail. It's used to represent the eternal cycle of destruction and rebirth. And I mean, you've seen it. It's like a very common tattoo. And it expresses the unity of all things, material and spiritual, which never disappear but perpetually change form. If I want to relate it to the book, Angus was all about the laws of math and science. This is like the law of conservation of mass, that matter cannot be created or destroyed. So there you go. Ouroboros.
It's a snake that's eating himself.
Snake that's eating itself.
Yeah. I like how you've seen it before. It's a popular tattoo.
It is. It's a very popular tattoo.
Now, is it a tattoo that someone might have around like their bicep?
Oh,
Like
maybe.
You know, like how barbed wire tattoos were popular at one time.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that how you have the snake? You have
I guess that's a possibility, but I was picturing more just like the image on a flatter surface.
A flatter circle.
Yes, like on your back or
On
a
the back.
calf.
All right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of places you could
Forearm.
tattoo something.
Yeah. Forehead. I don't know.
Right.
But
It's got to be a snake, and it's got to be eating
it's a snake
itself.
or a dragon.
Or a dragon.
Snake or a dragon. Yeah.
I wonder what's more common.
Ouroboros.
Or a Boris. A snake or a dragon or a Boris.
Yeah.
In fine form today, everyone.
Well, and that leads to my word for the month, which is from the book, and it's blatherskite. So, according to Merriam-Webster, blatherskite is a person who blathers a lot and can also refer to blather and nonsense itself. Blather means voluble, nonsensical, and inconsequential talk or writing. So, blatherskite is a person who talks a lot of nonsense and you shouldn't take them seriously. It's a Scots word, no surprise, that combines blather, as defined above, and skite or skate, which means a contemptible person. Its first known use was around 1650. Angus used a lot of entertaining Scottish terms in this novel, and that particular one just struck my fancy. So, blatherskite. I feel it's like a word we can definitely keep alive. So, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this month. Thank you for joining us, dear readers. For our next episode, we're going to read and discuss Kiss of the Fur Queen by Thompson Highway. Born into a magical Cree world in snowy northern Manitoba, Champion and Unumitu Okamasis are all too soon torn from their family and thrust into the hostile world of a Catholic residential school. Their language is forbidden, their names are changed to Jeremiah and Gabriel, and both boys are abused by priests. As young men, estranged from their own people and alienated from the culture imposed upon them, the Okamasis brothers fight to survive. But wherever they go, the Fur Queen, a wily, shape-shifting trickster, watches over them as they fulfill their destiny to become artists. Kiss of the Fur Queen is a powerful and beautiful tale of siblings and tricksters, culture and trauma, and finding yourself in a world that tries to tell you who you are. Have comments or book suggestions for us? Send us an email. You can find all our contact info at the bottom of the page at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca. You can also find all our past episodes there too. If you haven't already, subscribe to Time to Read on your favorite podcasting service. Maybe leave us a review. Tell your book-loving friends about us too. And until next time, make sure you find
Time to read.
All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I ever really need is a little more time to read.
Do you remember that thing that was going around many years ago where you could type Florida man and your birthday and it would pop up with some like bizarre headline?
No.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah. There was a thing and it would just be like, I'm going to do it right now just so we can see. So I just Googled Florida man, my birthday. Florida man without arms charged after allegedly stabbing tourist with his feet. And like no matter what dates you put in, you find something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I also have Florida man tries to escape arrest on riding lawnmower.
Seems kind of tame.
Florida man invites police to smoke pot while showing off his marijuana.
When's your birthday, Dennis? Florida man arrested for beating and throwing chair at child in donut shop.
Well, that's kind of dark. Why do I get the really dark, crappy child abuse
Florida
one?
man smothers nephew's meatball sandwich with eye drop solution because he hated them that day. What?
God.
Man, I got the mean ones.
Yeah, all of mine are riffs on encouraging the police to smoke marijuana with them.
Was yours set for April 20th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Florida man arrested for DUI while lemur and wallaby escaped from truck during traffic stop.
That's a good one.
Good Lord. Florida man steals alligator from golf course, tries teaching it a lesson by throwing it on roof of bar.
That'll show it.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, that's where
funny because it's true.
Those alligators have had it their way long enough.
that's where Tim Dorsey really shines. The wild stuff.
It wasn't also like Carl Hyacin was kind of like that too. Some of his books.
Oh,
right?
Carl Hyacin was great.
Yeah.
Oh, I read so many of his books. He could be really cutting and insightful. And then Dave Barry, who worked, I think, at the same paper as him, started doing those. And they were like Carl Hyacin, but quieter and more polite. More family friendly.
Yeah.
Carl Hyacin had a bite to him. Oh, those were good books. I should see if there's any I haven't read yet.